got $2,500 in cold, hard Canadian cash that showed up in the mail when I was living in Roseville, California. I was as close to having a mental breakdown as I have ever been. Some of the darkest winter months in the Canadian winter and coldest months. At the end of these 3 months, I went 8 days without seeing a soul. If there's one thing that you need to learn to do in business, it's negotiate and renegotiate terms of deals, contracts, and business arrangements. Learning to do business with a handshake is powerful. I love the light this time of night, and I've got a couple pets hanging out, so you might hear or see a few things in a little more action than normal. I'm lucky to have a quiet house, so I thought I'd quickly do a video and share a couple thoughts with you. Have you ever heard of somebody getting thousands of dollars in the mail, cash, not for drug money? Well, I did. I received one time, years ago, $2,500 in the mail, cash, that had been sent across the border from Canada to the US. This was a reward, a thank you gift for doing something really difficult. And it was one of the greatest lessons of my life. I have often reflected on this lesson, and I have shared this lesson with many people through the years. It's one that I have used in a lot of situations because it connects very deeply to something the Bible talks about. Being a person of your word. Everyone is a brand these days. There's lots of content creation. We've always been our own individual person, but more people have the option to be entrepreneurial and build their own business. We're witnessing a day and age where there are more entrepreneurs than ever before. To be successful in business, whether or not you're in your own business or working for someone else, we all have a reputation, and our reputation is based on you being a person of your word. Your reputation is based off of what other people perceive that you will do. This difficult lesson came in a hard season of my life, but it drove home not just the ability to become a person of my word, but I learned how to keep my word when things were difficult. I learned a strategy to renegotiate that has stood the test of time whenever I've been in a situation where I can't keep my word, whether personally or in business. And whenever I've come to a situation where I've been stuck and feel like I'm at an impasse where I can't do what I said I would do, but I don't want to break the relationship and I don't want to damage my reputation, I have drawn on this one piece of advice that I was given years ago by an aunt in the remote mountains of northern British Columbia. I was caretaking a ranch in an area called Pink Mountain, about 300 miles north of the city that I'd grown up in. And I had spent 3 months caretaking this property in the middle of winter. One of the most isolating experiences imaginable. I had been very alone for 3 months. The property was in the process of being purchased by another couple and sold by the ones that owned it. And in the end, the deal fell apart. Nearing the end of the 3 months that I've been caretaking this property, the original owners asked if I would stay on another 3 months into the summer to caretake this property. They were concerned of vandalism and people. It was a multi-million-dollar property, gorgeous ranch, huge ranch house, a dream, just absolutely phenomenal in an area where one of the only wild buffalo herds in British Columbia and even Western Canada. Spectacular views, just beautiful place. I didn't have another job lined up after this period of time, as I was finishing the contract out for the people that were trying to buy the house. When the original owners asked me to be contracted to stay on, I had agreed. I thought I could do that, and I had no other work lined up. Little did I know I would come to the end of my rope. Before my original contract finished, I realized that being alone in that solitude had set in so greatly. I was as close to having a mental breakdown as I have ever been, maybe will ever be. At the end of these 3 months of being almost completely alone, only seeing a few people, I think I went to town for 1 or 2 days in the middle of 3 months. I had a couple friends visit me, or my parents came out. And other than that, once a week I would see my nearest neighbors that were trappers who lived further up the valley from this ranch that I was caretaking, like away from civilization. They had a house, lived full-time on a trap line, so they made their full income. And to my knowledge, they were the last full-time trappers living in British Columbia. Once a week, I would go up and have lunch with them or coffee, and once a week they would come and check on me while checking their trap lines. And this was in the middle of winter. I had no vehicle to get out. I went to this property through February, March, and April, and so some of the darkest winter months in the Canadian winter and coldest months. At the end of these 3 months, I went 8 days without seeing a soul. One of the most horrifically trying times of my life, but something I've also drawn on for years, because that's what difficult circumstances and doing difficult things do. They change you from the inside out. And so I realized there was no way I could stay another 3 months. And so I called my aunt. I needed to break my commitment where I'd said that I would stay, and I'd done it on a handshake. I'd given my verbal agreement to a family that was very old school, a gentleman who I would later have other business arrangements with, and he used to pay me in $100 bills, just lay down cold hard cash in situations. And so I was really at an impasse. I didn't know what to do, because I felt I had really good reasons to break my word. My aunt gave me incredible counsel in that trying season. She challenged me to go back to the people I'd made this arrangement with a really open heart, to be very gracious and kind, tell them that things have changed, new circumstances have arisen, and ask if we could renegotiate the terms of the agreement. Tell them why I was concerned that I couldn't keep my agreement. Ask to be released from keeping that agreement. If they weren't willing to do that, ask if they would, maybe I could keep that agreement if other things were provided, whether through them or in the arrangement and how we came to an agreement. She had suggested things like maybe if they provided a vehicle. I didn't have a vehicle at the time, and I was very isolated without a vehicle, and maybe in the summer I could come and go more often. Maybe I didn't have to be there 7 days a week and only 4 or 5 days a week, and I could be in town for the other few days. I remember her offering a few different ideas like this. In the end, I went back to this family, I renegotiated with them, and they graciously released me from the contract, my verbal agreement to stay on, to be paid to caretake their ranch while they looked for another buyer. And that lesson has stood the test of time. And I have shared this lesson with countless people. I have used it in I don't know how many business interactions, in personal situations, over and over again. When I find that I can't keep my word, I go back and I renegotiate. Since that day, from that day forward, I don't know of a situation that I've broken or not been able to keep my word. I have found a way to protect the relationship, acknowledge the cost that it might take to keep the relationship over my own well-being. And so protecting the relationship, protecting the agreements, but doing it in a way that I can also protect myself and renegotiate things. I just share this with you because it was so valuable. I use this on a constant basis. If there's one thing that you need to learn to do in business, it's negotiate and renegotiate terms of deals, contracts, and business arrangements. Learning to do business with a handshake is powerful. There's a story in The Speed of Trust, which was written by, I think it was Stephen Covey, that wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it was his son, somebody named Covey, who wrote the book The Speed of Trust. Brilliant book. And in there he talks about how people like Warren Buffett are able to do business so incredibly fast and on such incredibly high levels because they do business with a handshake. When we trust people, we can do it based on a word and a handshake and an agreement. When we don't trust people, we have to impose all these contracts and documents. That's why lawyers are so prolific in America, because there's so much fear that we're going to be taken advantage of, or we're going to be screwed, or we're going to be injured at some point. And so I'm not saying there isn't room to have lawyers, and there's a reason. I'm sure Warren Buffett has many lawyers. But what he's done is, first and foremost, made doing business with a handshake, verbally, the power of that relationship. Gary Vee also talks about this. That was one of the greatest lessons he learned. I think I have a short video on it somewhere on this channel as well. This is a really powerful lesson. And I was rewarded years later when that property sold for multi-millions. The family had tried to track me down. They'd had difficulty finding where I was in. I can't remember the circumstances. But I went out to the mail one day and there was a box. That sucker was taped to no end with that really heavy tape that has twine in it. It had the customs packing. It had been shipped across the border. I don't know how they got it across the border. What they declared was in that box, but I got $2,500 in cold, hard Canadian cash that showed up in the mail when I was living in Roseville, California, a little suburb outside of Sacramento, and it made my day, made my week. I had no income at the time and was traveling around on faith. God was moving in my life, but it was an amazing reward. They had honored the fact that I'd kept my commitment to the original owners, and I'd stayed there and caretaken that property even though those other people could not buy the property. They were so thankful that they later offered me another job. I had many other great experiences with that family and learned a lot from them. And so I just share this with you today because if there is one strategy or one key that you can apply to learn to do business by keeping your word, just like the Bible says, let your yes be your yes and let your no be your no, learning to do business on a handshake. I am telling you, this is one of the guiding things that my husband and I have used in building 3 businesses. He built an incredible reputation as a high-end custom home renovator. He did it all on a handshake. He would only choose clients he felt he could trust to do business with a handshake. We hardly ever employed contracts. We wanted to do business only with people that we trusted. People sought him out because he was so trustworthy. I could brag on him all day, but I'll leave it at that. I challenge you to learn to do business with a handshake. Be a person of your word, and you will begin to experience incredible favor and blessing in business, in your finances, in your employment. You are going to be someone that people trust, and there are rewards for being trustworthy. So with that, I will see you on the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Appreciate you so much.